Hello and welcome again to my channel, the Amenorrhea Fertility Diaries. In this channel, I speak about health, nutrition, fertility, the menstrual cycle, and more specifically about the lack of the menstrual cycle due to a condition called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Hypothalamic amenorrhea is when a normally menstruating female loses her cycle due to reasons of stress, overexercising, and undereating. As you know from my previous videos, I have suffered from HA, which is the shortage for hypothalamic amenorrhea, and it's what I will be using from now on. And I was able to recover fully naturally from HA. So the motivation for these videos is to share my story and my knowledge and to help other females out there suffering from this very common condition right now. And as you know, HA is diagnosed by exclusion, so you have to exclude before with your doctor that you don't have any other condition and that's why you are missing your menstrual cycle. I also invite you to have a look at my previous videos where I go more into detail about my story and where I give you some very specific tips on how to recover. But this video specifically is going to be about lab tests. So during my recovery, I did about 10 or 11 laboratory blood tests during the time frame of 2 years. So I was going pretty often, and it's a little bit of a complicated subject to go into. That's why I hadn't done any videos on this before, because, well, the main thing is that everybody is quite different and that a lot of these hormonal values or values that you get from the lab tests are not equal in time. So as my doctor said, it's a little bit like a highway. If you test in the morning, your hormones are going to be in one way, and if you test in the evening, it can fluctuate quite a lot. So that's why it's a good indicator, but not, we shouldn't interpret it as the absolute true or the absolute guide to towards recovery, because as I said, it can fluctuate due to many factors that are not necessarily related with our more like important habits and all of that. So, for example, they never recommend you to go out drinking the night before you have a lab test. They recommend you to not exercise before your lab test. They recommend you to go in a fasted state, to not have any influences from other digestive enzymes, hormones, etc. Anyway, I want to get into a little bit the values that are studied when you have HA and what the normal values would be, so the different hormonal values, and what my values were also during that. And then in the end, I would like to close it up and speak a little bit about hormonal replacement theory. So this is when you decide to go for, trying to recover your cycle with the help of external hormones in the form of pills, injections, or there's even creams nowadays that you can apply. And I will tell you in which cases I think it's recommended to do it and in which not. The motivation for this video was one of the comments that you gave me, so I really appreciate your comments. I'm super happy. As you know, I give you like huge comment back, so now that I'm still starting with this, I still have the time to do it. So please comment, ask me questions, give me feedback. I love it. And this was a request by a very sweet lady that gave me a very nice comment on my previous videos and asked me to do an episode dedicated to this. So I'm sorry I couldn't do it before, but as you know, I also have a full-time job that I have to attend. So now we go, and here we are. Before digging into it, I want to throw a huge disclaimer again that, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just sharing my own experience. And I kind of became a science nerd and a freak, so I read a lot about this, and I'm doing a study on the side, which I haven't finished yet, which is all about nutrition and how to become a hypothalamic amenorrhea recovery coach. So I do know quite a lot about the subject, and that's why I'm doing the videos, but I don't want you to take my comments as medical advice, especially on these matters that we're going to really dig into the medical side of it. So my hope is that you will be working together with a doctor, ideally a gynecologist or perhaps an endocrine or another healthcare provider, and that maybe you can go into dialogue with this person about the things that you've learned here and etc. But don't take it as final medical advice, please. So we were saying that HA, hypothalamic amenorrhea, is always reversible, which is a good thing, and it's always diagnosed by exclusion. And I want to touch on the other typical causes that can be causing you to not have your menstrual cycle that are not HA, so other diseases or other conditions that can be the cause of it. Just to name them quickly, so when you go to the doctor, you haven't had your cycle for more than 3 to 6 months, you are definitely not pregnant, then the first thing they will do is order a laboratory blood test, because it's where you really see what is happening and if there is any indicator that something else is really wrong. So let's go through it. So the other conditions that can cause your menstrual cycle to stop, other than being pregnant, as I said, or breastfeeding or post-pregnancy, could be, for example, a pituitary tumor. So one of the tests that I had to do, other than lab tests, was an MRI scan of my brain, scanning the area of the hypothalamus, which in Spanish it's called la silla turca, so it's a completely different name, just for you to know. And well, this is really like 99.9% of the cases that are missing, their cycles and don't have any other conditions. It won't be due to this. It's a very, very small chance that you would have it, but it's good to do it if you are already working with a doctor to rule it out anyway. I must say, I guess it depends a lot on where you live. But I'm very lucky that, I feel very lucky that in Europe we have a great health care system, and I actually took a private insurance, but it's not too expensive here in Spain, and it's amazing. You have like unlimited unlimited access to all these tests, and it has cost me nothing extra. So some of the tests you have to pay, but it will be maximum like 30-40 euros, which is quite affordable to everyone. I know people living in other continents, maybe like the US, and so that's maybe a different story. So I don't know how much access you have to these tests, but anyway, let's say you can go the whole way around. Probably you will have to do this MRI scan to see that you don't have any pituitary tumors that are disrupting the connection of your pituitary gland, which is the one that will give the signal from the brain to the ovaries to ovulate. So once you've ruled out that, you also need to have, of course, a scan of your ovaries. Like when you go to the gynecologist in general, they do an ecography and they check that everything is okay, to see that there is no ovarian damage or like an ovarian failure. It's funny because before I had HA, I had actually a very important operation. I had a huge horse riding accident. I love horse riding, but it is quite dangerous, and I broke my nose and part of my hip and everything. So I went to surgery, and I had like full anesthesia and surgery on my nose, and it was actually right after that I lost my cycle. So it was a bit like, for a long time I thought they maybe, I don't know, touched something in my head, or they made a mistake or whatever, or there was something wrong with my ovaries, because before that I had like many periods of time where I would restrict food and be much skinnier than now, but never lost my cycle. And the conclusion was, of course, this had to do, it was all part of the stress that it gave to my body, but it was also really much related to the fact that I was on these extreme keto diets and like over exercising, and this was like the final thing that made my body just shut down the reproductive function. Okay, so ovarian failure. Then you also have to rule out that you don't have premature menopause. This is a quite rare condition, but it can happen. It can be a consequence of premature ovarian failure as well, so it's quite related to that. I'm not an expert in that, but I know that very easily they can rule this out doing the first lab test and looking at the hormonal values, which we're going to go into in a little bit. And once they see that you don't have very like strange levels of prolactin hormone, or that your FSH and LH are in kind of normal ranges, then they can rule out that those two are not the cause of HA. And equally, you will have to do a test where they see your thyroid hormones and your thyroid profile. And there, it's quite normal to have a little bit to the low side thyroid when you have HA, because you don't have any estrogens, you don't have any LH surge, so all this affects the thyroid, and it's not going to be like on its most active moment, but it shouldn't be like super low. If it's like extremely low, then you might have hypothyroidism, and then an endocrine doctor is the one who will have to help you further, because you have to be very careful with this. Some of the hormonal replacement therapy treatments that you can have when you think you have HA and you decide to go for that might interfere with your thyroid situation. So you should really have this ultra clear and work with doctors to diagnose HA. As I said, be careful, because a lot of doctors don't even know what HA is, so you have to also be very aware. Read as much as possible, and as I said, become a science nerd or a little Sherlock Holmes about your own situation, because you can't put everything in trust of the doctors. But once you find one doctor that knows what it's HA, that listens to you, that knows about the things we're talking to, that doesn't tell you directly that you're not skinny enough to have HA, once you have found that gynecologist like I did, then I think you have to work with him. Finally, you have PCOS, which is a very common condition also. It's very common that people with HA are misdiagnosed with PCOS. I actually was watching some, I don't know how I came to that, but it's some old things that I used to follow when I was in this losing weight track. So I was following all these Victoria's Secret models and their diets. I know it's crazy, but anyway. And some old video of that popped up into my my YouTube account, and I saw how one of these, I'm not gonna say her name, but she's skinny. She looks beautiful on the show and everything, but it's far too skinny. Typical person who would have HA, no doubt. Although you don't have to be skinny to have HA. But she was saying how she was diagnosed with PCOS, and that's why she had to even go even more low sugar and even more low carb, and be even more careful with what foods she would take, because it's generally attributed to the type of person that will be susceptible for diabetes. So people with PCOS, they recommend to eat no sugar and all that. And this person, I could put my hand on the fire and say that she was actually misdiagnosed and that she actually had HA, because she had no acne, totally not the type of body that you would expect for someone with PCOS. But as I said, it's never black and white, so you have to work closely with your doctor with it. But you can easily rule all this out from basic lab test. Okay, let's look at the different sexual hormones that are normally tested when we do laboratory work, laboratory tests, and at their different values. So the four main sexual hormones that are the ones responsible for the menstrual cycle are the estrogen and progesterone, which we already know. We have talked about it. I've done a lot of videos talking about how you can boost estrogen and progesterone naturally with foods that you eat and behaviors and ways of moving, etc. Estrogen and progesterone belong to the ovarian axis, so to the ovarian line of hormones. And then you have FSH and LH, which belong to the pituitary axis, the pituitary line of hormones. FSH is the follicle stimulating hormone, and LH is the luteinizing hormone. FSH is the one that will be responsible for maturing the eggs, and LH is the one that peaks right before the ovulation, and that will give the signal to release the eggs. So the brain here is always the captain. You have to remember that. So the hypothalamus, the brain, is the one that's going to give the signal to the ovaries, the hormones, to do all of this process called menstruation. So we're still talking about a brain condition, when we've ruled out that you don't have any other ovarian problems, for example, or a problem in the connections between both, the way we've said in the beginning. So actually, I want to show you in this graphic that I'm going to put here how this works exactly. So as I've explained before in other videos, as you can see here, the chart is divided into sides. So we have the first part, which is the follicular phase, and that's from day 1 of your cycle to day 14. I remind you, day 1 is the day you start bleeding. So this is what we call the follicular phase, the second phase after day 14 until day 28 or 29, or it depends on how long your cycle is. The second phase, that is the luteal phase. So on the first phase, you see that FSH is kind of at its highest, because it's when the follicles are being stimulated, when the eggs are maturing. And then you see that estrogen, which is the blue line, is raising raising slowly after the days of bleeding. Okay, so that the signal starts from the brain tells actually estrogen goes up, and then you see that when we get closer to ovulation, there is a huge sudden peak in LH, the luteinizing hormone. So this is the one thing that you are missing when you have HA. You don't have that peak, so there's no egg release over there. And actually, this peak is something that we use a lot to track. For example, females who have their menstrual cycle normally and they're trying to get pregnant, they will take these strips where you can pee on them and they can show you when your LH peak has been, and then you can see that normally a little bit after that you will ovulate, and that's when the days, well, actually just before that are the days that you can get pregnant. Anyway, that's another subject, but yeah, LH peaks and then it goes down a lot, and then on the second phase is actually when progesterone starts slowly building up. As you see, it goes up, 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 and then it goes down again. So that's basically the the way that the menstrual cycle works. So now looking at my labs, as I said, I had a lot of them. So it's from 2021 until 2023. Actually, the thing with HA is that the hormonal values of LH, FSH, and even estrogen and progesterone are quite normal. You know, they're normal, but a little bit to the low side. So as I said, this is all more to rule out that you don't have any other condition, such as premature menopause or PCOS or anything else like that. So typical HA values are normal to low. And the same is for the thyroid values. But some of mine here are from some of the older ones, as I see, very well, kind of to the low side. LH 1.35 and FSH 5.9. Yeah, it's like typical from first phase, could be a little bit to the lower side. Here suddenly it's a little bit higher. FSH 8.1, and then I see here from April 2022 FSH 5.1, LH 0.8, which is very low. I was quite deep in HA over there. But as I said, also it totally depends. I mean, if you take the test in the morning, it'll say one thing. If you take it in the evening, it'll say another. If you've eaten something weird before, it'll totally disturb and disrupt your test. So it's not such a good indicator. Anyway, also during HA, everything is flat. So the interesting thing about these hormones is how they fluctuate and they pulsate, no? But with HA, it's all like stopped. Here I see June 2022. Yeah, I didn't have my period there. It's, LH 0.9, FSH 5.8. Well, I see this quite regularly in the times where I didn't have a period. So it seems to be like 0.9 and around 5, 5.5 FSH. And then prolactin I see is normal, but here it's a little bit low, 3.6. It's quite low, which is normal also for HA, sorry. And yeah, this one is interesting to October 2022, because then I think I got my period back there. So let's see if it changes. Well, funnily enough, it doesn't change too much, you see, so a little bit higher. Prolactin is also a little bit higher, 4.3, but still quite to the lower side. Progesterone 0.2, but yeah, it depends on, because I was probably in my follicular phase there. And then I have February 2023, LH 1.4, FSH 6.3, prolactin 4.9, which is low but normal also, and within the normal ranges. And here May 2023, that's closer to now. Yeah, now it's higher. I see 7.4, of course, because I had my cycle back then. So you do see that these hormonal values increase a little bit, but nothing huge, because HA is normal hormones, but no period. So it's a big mystery almost, no? Then there's some other hormones that are also always tested, and which you can also look at, which are testosterone. Testosterone, as I said, in HA will also stay normal in most cases. It's generally looked at to rule out PCOS, so it can have some strange effects on testosterone because you are more prone to being affected by androgens. So yeah, that's why they say like strong acne and like strange hair growth that you didn't have before in other places where you didn't have them, you know, like on the face. And so for females, this can be related to an excess of testosterone. But with HA, generally, no, generally it's quite normal. Perhaps a bit to the lower side, but nothing extreme. For me, it was always normal, stays quite stable actually. But as I said, testosterone is one of the most fluctuating hormones, so it depends totally on the time of the day you test it. So you should at least test always on the same times, which is normally in the morning, because you go on a fasted state. Prolactin, we spoke about that before. Prolactin is the hormone that you segregate when you are breastfeeding, and this will disrupt ovulation as well. It's all due to reason, no? But it can also have strange values if you have a condition, which is like hyperprolactinemia. So you have to rule out that you have that. And sometimes when you have premature menopause or just menopause, it can go up. So normally in HA, it will be normal to low side. And the other one is the sex hormone binding globulin. This one is not so much spoken about, but in HA, as I said, it's also normally on the normal range and to the lower side. By the way, when I say a normal range, so always when you do a lab test, next to the indicators, you will have like what are the normal values. You know, it's between this and that, and with the so between value X and value that, it's normal. And then in most of the sexual hormones, you will have the distinction between which phase you are. So for a normally menstruating female, in follicular phase, a normal LH value is between 0.x and X number. I'm not going into detail into which numbers because it makes no sense. In some countries it's different the way they count them, and also for each person it's different. So you will always have the normal range, and if it's like on a red color or on a like a marked color, then it means that it's out of the normal range, and then you will have to look into it, just in case you want to interpret your lab tests on your own, which I will never recommend. I mean, just look for a doctor because that's what they're trained for, and at least maybe ask them to do it together with you so that you understand it also. Finally, the thyroid, it's also always tested. As I said, HA, it's normal to have a little bit of a lower TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone. They will also test like a more specific profile probably, especially if you go to your endocrine to rule out that you have hypothyroidism or any other thyroid condition. So they will look at T3, T4, but normally when you have HA, the values are low to normal. Then there's some other indicators in your lab work that can be related to HA as well, but it's more like an effect of having low estrogen. So in my case, for example, cholesterol, which before was always normal in me, and I've always been quite a healthy person. I do a lot of exercise, so I'm totally not the type of profile to have high cholesterol. The opposite way around, I've always had like lower blood pressure, like normal to the lower side, and I've not really been overweight. There's not really obesity in my family, so it's strange. But since I had HA, my cholesterol has been quite high, like really high. One of the doctors was quite worried, but I've read a lot about this and learned a lot, and really every respectable doctor that has done some study additionally after their graduation, the 80s or whatever, will know that cholesterol is much more complicated than just saying, oh, eat less fat, because it's actually, a lot of people point out that it's not really related to what you eat. Of course it is, but not to eating more fat, for example. And that, for example, this thing we used to believe that eating red meat will higher your cholesterol, it's like, some people say it's it's a total myth. Anyway, there's a lot of theories in here. It's not what we're going to speak about in this video, but it's quite normal to have a little bit higher levels of cholesterol when you have such low estrogen. Apparently, it's an effect of the low estrogen and also of the low thyroid that you have as a consequence of the low estrogen. So somehow this doesn't like distribute the cholesterol particles in the same way, and that's why you might have a little bit higher. you shouldn't be too worried about it because yeah, if you don't have any, if you have a like healthy cardiovascular function and you exercise, you're a healthy person, you shouldn't be worried about this too much. If it gets too high, speak to your doctor, of course, but just know that it's normal, and probably when you recover your cycle, it will go back to its previous level. Then it's very dangerous to have low cholesterol also. So it's funny, in eating disordered people, I know you don't need to have an eating disorder to have HA, but it's quite common to see very high cholesterol levels or very low ones. And this is all due to the messed up thyroid function. It's totally related to your hormones, basically, cholesterol, no? And then we have, some of the main causes of not getting this LH surge that we were talking about and not getting to ovulate and everything could be some vitamin deficiencies. It's not so easy to get a vitamin deficiency. You know, we sometimes say, yeah, I'm low on iron, low on this or that, but it's quite a big thing. So I was always a bit low on vitamin D. It's true that I'm not the most, I like to go out and so, but I'm kind of always protecting myself from the sun because I don't want to get wrinkles, and I'm not such a, I enjoy the sun, but I also I'm not very good with the heat and all that. So even though I live in Spain, I always had low vitamin D. That's better now, and it's apparently super important for your menstrual cycle to function properly. And other vitamins that we see in deficiency that may cause HA are vitamin C and vitamin E. And all the doctors that I follow, that I respect, and you can do your research out there, but they say it's much better to get them from natural sources than from supplements. So, for example, if you really live in a country with no light and it's really difficult to get your sunlight, get some extra vitamin D, but it will never be having the same effect as the natural sunlight gives you. Or, for example, for vitamin C or E, you can get it from different foods. I've done tons of videos on which foods give you each vitamin, but vitamin C, we all know citrus fruits are amazing for it, like lemons. Just drink lemon water, it's fantastic. Oranges and all that. And vitamin E is also a lot of different fruits and vegetables that has it. A lot of different types of food, actually nuts as well. You can look at the other videos to see. Vitamin B9, very important, is the folic acid vitamin. So this one is found in a lot of different foods, but especially also in organ meats, which can be quite healthy. I know not everybody likes them, but like liver, for example, has a lot of this, so that can be a nice thing to include in your diet. I actually do like it, but I just always forget about it, so I'm actually now making these recipes with liver and stuff like that, just every now and then. Which helps. And then, of course, all the macros are very important. If you come from the 80s, 90s tradition, you're probably all low on fat because they were all fearing fat. And this can have a huge impact on how you absorb your vitamins, because most of the vitamins are fat soluble. So if you don't eat enough fat, you will have deficiencies because due to malabsorption. I'm not talking about unhealthy fats. Stay away from the processed oils like canola oil and all that for sure, but for example, eat the fat of the meats. It's super good. And as I said, avocados, olive oil is amazing, and all these little bit more fatty products such as all these vegetables, avocados, etc. Super important. And then, of course, the big one, carbs. If you are from my generation and you've been always trying to lose weight and all that, you probably known about the low-carb diets and the keto diets, which still, in a way, I don't know, it's like my way of eating because I got so used to it. And, it's nice. I think it can have a lot of benefits when you take out, processed bread, rice, and all that. You kind of automatically start cooking more your foods because you have to make everything from scratch, which has a good effect on the diversity of your foods, and it makes you eat more real and whole foods. But carbs in se are super important also, especially for females, and especially for females in HA. So go to the nature's carbs, sweet potato, amazing potatoes, also even some nice sourdough bread, and bloody hell, have the croissant when you want it, because if you have HA, and probably you will be needing some extra carbs, and your body's gonna love it. It's important for progesterone to build up and to get all these hormones balanced that we talked about before. And then protein, it's a super important one. We take it for granted now because we all come from this fitness world where we prioritize protein. I'm not saying you have to go to protein only to a protein only diet, of course not, and it's very related to the low carb thinking. But of course, you still need to eat enough protein. It's really what's going to send the signal to your brain of being satiated. That's why in the weekends I love to go to these grilled steak houses. We have a few here that are from like Argentinian type meat, or north of Spain also has this very good meat tradition, and we eat these huge steaks and everything, and it's just amazing the way I feel afterwards. I feel like happy and satiated and not bloated and good, and it's just that's the feeling you need to give your brain to be safe and to feel safe to ovulate. So protein, of course, super, super, super important. I still don't know how vegans and vegetarians do it, to be honest. I mean, I have all the respect because I love animals, and I even was vegetarian for a while. And it made me be much more health conscious, and it made me be much more creative with my veggies, which is great. I think it's super important. And probably if you look at the standard, standard American diet, like they call it, and they think you have to eat hamburgers all day. Of course, that's not healthy. Probably to eat more vegetables is the best you can do. I still eat mainly plants, but I mean, you need your protein, and it's just difficult to get it only. It's just basically it's impossible to get it only from plants. So I don't know if you have HA and you're a vegetarian. I would really work with a dietitian and perhaps consider to be a bit more flexible with this, so that you can get all your nutrients that your body needs to feel safe and ovulate. Now, just briefly, I want to go through again the main causes of not getting that LH peak that we need to ovulate. And these can be, energy imbalance, like we said, not enough calories for what you are consuming. For me, this is still a work in progress. I still exercise a bit, and just some people burn more calories than others. And somehow when I just stop eating the way that I told you that you have to eat 3 meals a day and all that, immediately my cycle gets messed up. And I am in a healthy weight. I'm not exercising that much anymore, so it's super important. In my head, the calories I think that I have to eat is just much lower than what I really need. So that's super important. It's the main cause of HA is this, number one. Second cause would be stress from exercise. Exercise does release cortisol, and cortisol can be released due to exercise, due to adrenal stress also, which can be caused also by psychological stress, but it's very, very uncommon. It's more like the effect of the psychological stress has on your habits, like not eating and all that, which will be the cause. But it can be, I mean, if you really have, especially people who have psychiatric conditions who can create such fear status in their head that their body also reacts physiologically to it. So it's all about cortisol. Cortisol actually is a very good hormone to keep into account. And I always ask my doctor to prescribe me the cortisol test also, so that they test it. But he always tells me that it makes no sense, because he says it's like the most fluctuating hormone you can have. If you drink a coffee before, it will be to the roof. In the morning, it's one value. In the evening, it's another. So he says it's just complete. It's like looking at, you would have to do a graphic, and test it all over the time. But I did see in some of my lab tests that the moments when I was recovering and I was almost about to ovulate and all that, actually my cortisol had gone down quite a lot. So if you have chronic stress, you will have chronically high cortisol, but that's impossible. Your body cannot be always with cortisol state. So the way to stop that is to stop the ovulation function. So it's all about that. And as I said, cortisol is also very connected. It's like the antagonist of the hormone we call oxytocin and of serotonin, which are like the calming and the bonding hormones I spoke about. So the more oxytocin, serotonin you have, the more cortisol goes down. And one of the ways to boost serotonin is also through eating more carbs and also eating more food. So it's not one or the other. It's not or psychological or the way you eat. It's all together, all connected. The way you eat is also a way of self-love to yourself, and that's how you have to see it. Other reasons, again, are poor sleep. It's super important. If you don't sleep well, or if the quality of your sleep is not good, so if you wake up too much, which is common for HA again, your body will be stressed. It will not be able to handle sugar balances again. It will not be able to do the digestion properly and to handle cortisol and adrenal stress properly. So that's why you will be more prone to get stressed and to get HA. So sleep is super important. I'm doing like minimum 8 hours of sleep, and when I can, I do more. Like last time I slept 10 hours, but I needed it and I felt great the next day. So it's really like sleep. It's the cure. On holidays, I always used to get, like once I was on holiday and I got my period back. I remember I realized that it probably was because I was sleeping without an alarm. So unfortunately, we work, so we have to work around it. But just I put an alarm to go to bed now, so that I really get those 8 hours for sure, and if possible a bit extra. And also maybe there can be some hidden infections, especially like in the gut area. So I've just been reading a lot about this from a very, very good doctor actually. Her name is Debbie, I forgot the name. I'm going to post it down below in the comments, but it was super interesting. And it was actually one of the podcasts of the Hypothalamic Amenorrhea Recovery Diaries or something like that. I don't remember exactly the name, but I'll put it down below. It was really inspiring. And there she was saying that you can have some problems with your gut. And these can also, again, be related to a low thyroid or to any other conditions. That's why you're not absorbing all the nutrients in a good way. So that's, again, why you need these lab tests to see that there's nothing very weird. Sometimes if you can have too high hemoglobin markers or something, then your doctor will know there's something wrong with perhaps your pancreas or your liver or all of that. So that's why getting the lab work interpreted by a doctor who knows also about other conditions is super important. And it's just to see that there's not anything else causing the stress of your body, because this is also different kinds of stressors. And in the end, you could have suffered, as I said, from some kind of brain concussion or something like that. So you would have to see this would also show up on your lab tests. To finalize with, I want to just briefly touch on hormonal replacement therapy. This is something people will do. So it's when you take some pills to try to solve the problem. But I want to say very quickly that it will not solve your HA problem. So it's not like a short way or a shortcut to recovery. You need to do it naturally. You need to, mainly and probably in most cases, eat more, rest more, move less, and be more happy, sleep more. Everything that I've discussed, you have to do it also. But for example, if you're really trying to get pregnant and you're having problems ovulating and you're a little bit, you want to give it a push, and you've spoken with the doctor, you've done the steps, you don't get your period directly, or you're a bit, in a rush for some situation, which again, I don't recommend to do these things in a rush. It could be something for you. And then you will get a combination of estrogen pills and, ovulation induction pills, such as Clomid, for example, or in Spain it's Omifin. It's a medicament that you can take to induce ovulation. And this you will take in combination always with progesterone, some kind of progesterone in the form of pills or creams, as I said, or ingestions. You need to take them together, otherwise it makes no sense. Sometimes doctors will give you or prescribe you progesterone just to see if you do ovulate, because if you don't ovulate after taking progesterone, generally it's 15 days that you take it, and when you stop, you get a bleeding. This indicates that you're probably very deep in HA, and this can help you for the diagnosing of your problem. So you can do it as a test, but if you do it just to get your period back, I would recommend you to be patient and try to do it in a natural way. Again, it may be a little bit counterproductive to some people, because for a long time here myself, in my disordered mind, I don't have an eating disorder, but I was always like quite obsessed with your body and all that. I guess all women are nowadays. But I thought like, oh yeah, then I can keep on dieting and exercising and eating low carb and still get my period back, so I will take the hormones. But no, it doesn't work like that. I would only recommend it if you really want to induce ovulation and try to get pregnant, because there is some success stories about it. But you will always have to do it with also all the lifestyle changes that we've spoken about here, because otherwise it may not work. It's also a treatment that you shouldn't do too long in the time, because you are overstimulating there, and it can have some contrary effects, like if you're prone for cancers and that type of things. I mean, it's not something to play with, honestly. It's only like a desperate final way of trying to get an old car to work again. But if you do it too much, then you might overdo it. So that's my take on it. Well, here we are again, quite long video. I hope this was helpful. I hope it wasn't too chaotic, but anyway, I've given you my story, my reflection, my experience with this, and I hope this helps other women to, well, to get some context and to find their way into recovery. And as always, stay healthy, stay happy, give me a like, subscribe, give me your comments, and see you next time, my friends.